Welcome to The Connecting Place with Andrea Fabry, making the connection between health and your environment. Now, here's your host, Andrea Fabry.
Well, today we're going to talk about the health implications of Wi-Fi in schools. Should parents be concerned? What can be done to raise awareness about the issue? With us is Theodora Scarato. She is an activist extraordinaire. She's a mom. She works with a number of organizations, including Environmental Health Trust, Parents for Safe Technology, and a local parents group, Safe Tech for Schools Maryland. Theodora, welcome to The Connecting Place.
Oh, thank you so much.
How did you become interested? I know you're a mom, just living the everyday life, a very smart mom, I know. And how did you even become interested in this topic?
You know, when I first heard, I think on the news, something about how the brain changes with a phone call. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I started to learn a little bit more about it, and I got myself a headset. And as I began to read more, I actually decided to learn what were the exposures in my home. So I got myself a meter, kind of like it could measure the amount of radiation from different devices. And when I walked into my house, you know, I'd been using a headset with the phone at that point, most of the time, not all the time. We had Wi-Fi, of course. We had various wireless devices in the house, including cordless phones. And I was astounded. I walked into where my office was, and I said, oh, what is going on in my office? And realized that there were things radiating I had no idea about, like my home cordless phone, and, of course, the Wi-Fi router. And then I began to really dig in. And when I dug in, I went, wow.
Yeah.
You know, just impressed with how much research there was and how complicated it was, and how, for me as a mom, it really made sense to do whatever I could in the house to reduce exposure, because I knew the kids would have it everywhere. So that's how it started.
How long ago was that?
I would say it was 4 years ago.
Okay, because, you know, when you say there's Wi-Fi in the home, I'm thinking, well, that really isn't that long ago, because it's just come on so fast. And your kids were how old at the time?
10 and 8.
Okay, so you're right there with so many parents and the shock of it. And that, of course, is my story. It wasn't until I saw it on a meter, because you cannot see this radiation. It's hidden. Okay, so give us a summary then of what you've learned. You said you dug in, you researched, you read the research. What does the research tell us about wireless radiation and specifically Wi-Fi?
Well, first, I guess I would say there are thousands and thousands of studies, and I decided that I was going to plow through the research to really understand this, because I'll be frank, I didn't want to understand it. I didn't want to believe there would be a problem. I had gotten a cell phone and absolutely loved to text and, you know, loved my new laptop and the Wi-Fi. But for the kids, I just said, you know, I just want to learn more. And everything I read, there would be a study that said there was an issue. Then there'd be a study that there wasn't an issue. And then I began to understand, as I started reading the stories of researchers, that this has gotten a little complicated by maybe companies or political processes, and I just wanted to figure out for my children, how would this affect them? And when I read, like, the American Academy of Pediatrics had written a letter saying children are more vulnerable, and as I began to understand, you know, children's nervous systems are developing, their immune systems are developing, even their eyes are not fully developed until in their 20s. So exposures for us are going to be different for them. And that's what I really focused on, was in developing, like, if they did experimental studies. So there's one where pregnant mice were exposed, study at Yale, and the offspring of the exposed mice had impaired memory, and they were more hyperactive, and their brains were wired differently. And that really concerned me. All the all the research on the brain and the cognitive impacts, the radiation is absorbed deeper into children's brains. So when they hold the cell phone up to their head, they're getting a different amount of radiation penetrating into the brain than adults because their skulls are thinner and they have more liquid in those parts of their bodies. There's even research now with a tablet where children, they have done studies with a tablet, and it's at a certain distance from the head. But, kids always get really close up to their wireless devices. But even at a distance, it's still penetrating into their heads. And then I thought, having daughters, well, what about my girls who are putting the laptop on their laps? What does that mean for them in terms of their reproductive organs? And so it was like opening up a can of worms and quite overwhelming. But what I really came to understand is there are just too many studies showing effects. And taken all together, it's more than just a few warning flags. It makes sense that in other countries like France, where they're banning Wi-Fi in schools, and many countries actually recommend, bringing back to Wi-Fi in school, that you use wired whenever possible. Mm-hmm. And so what we did in our house is we hooked up the wires, and we use the internet all the time, and we use phones all the time, but they're all hardwired. And we don't have anything emitting radiation in the house. And actually, it was relatively simple once we knew how to do it. Yes. And I was thankful to know.
And then you turned activist, so to speak. You decided that if this is important in my home, this is important in my children's school, not only my children's school, but children's school around the country. When no one's aware of this, what do you do with the fact that all these studies, they are there showing that we need to be cautious when it comes to this radiation, and we're the opposite in this country? What do you do with that passion?
Well, what I did, I just sort of realized that I couldn't do nothing. That when it occurred to me, and it took time to realize as I dropped the girls off at school every day, and then they would be coming home talking about what they learned on the computer, and then I realized, you know what? Wow, like schools they could be using cords. Kids don't need to be walking. It's not like they're walking around with their devices in their hand. What a great way. If we can get our homes safe, then we can do schools. And I guess I just talking to other parents, and sometimes people aren't interested, and sometimes people are interested. And really, I guess for me, I just realized that I had no choice, that I had to start talking to people and getting them information that a lot of people weren't aware of. And I've had a lot of people tell me about, oh, thank you so much, and here's what I did at my house, and would you come to my house and help me with this? And I do a lot of that. I do a lot of bringing my meter over to other parents' house and walking through the house and showing them, here, oh, look, like someone's Xbox was emanating. Those actually are often, the video games are, emitting radiation all the time, and helping them with their home, and then beginning to talk about the school. And we've done, you can start a committee in your school for safe technology, and just talking about everything from privacy issues to the radiation issues to how to use technology most appropriately and safely in schools that really benefits the kids' learning. But what I would say is I know sometimes I know I've felt alone at times, and really it was just me. But now it's not anymore. And I think there are a lot of people who just wish they had known. And parents need information, and they need solutions. So I would encourage, whenever we raise this issue, to talk about solutions, because there are solutions.
So that you can talk to the administration rather than this stuff is killing our kids and leaving it at that. You're saying this stuff is potentially harmful and hampering the learning, which is what a school is all about. But here's what you can do. So yeah, I'd love to hear some of the solutions in a school setting.
Well, I've talked with a number of principals, and we also go to board meetings. We also do presentations. So classrooms can be hardwired, and just like in our homes, we can bring in wires and run them to different places. You can do that in a classroom setting. And I will say it takes, in a school, and depending on the school, it's going to take some effort. But in the end, it's to me, it's a no-brainer. Of course, we're going to run these wires, and we might have to reconfigure how the kids sit when they do their work, because if they need to be connected to the internet, they're going to need to be connected with a cord. But there have been lots of creative ways that people have come up with dealing with this. And also, things can be downloaded onto your computer so that you don't need to be using the internet all the time. And then when you need to hook it up, you can hook it up and, connect to the internet when you need to.
Well, let's talk about Ashland, Massachusetts, because that is the first school district, as I understand it, that actually instituted a school district-wide policy, correct?
Yes, that is the first public school, at least that I know of, first public school district in the United States that has a policy that does reduce radiation. And it's not it's a first step. Cece Duche she's a parent in Ashland, Massachusetts, and she started raising this issue. And what they have is in every classroom, they have a guidelines on best practices for mobile devices. They turn the Wi-Fi off when not in use, keeping it at a distance from the body. And she's done that by really working on informing and educating parents and policymakers about this issue. And I know that most recently she's working on supporting a fully wired classrooms, which is, of course, what would be the safest policy in schools. And what I'll tell you is in Onteora School District, I believe they are now doing that as well. And I heard from another group in California who's raising this issue in their school district, and working on ways to reduce exposure in the classroom. But I would also add that a fully wired setting is really what is the safest and best practice always. But every step is a step in the right direction. In Montgomery County, Maryland, in kindergartens, the kids have devices on laps, in circles, in classrooms. And this really concerns parents here because, that's just directly right over their ovaries and right on their bodies. And
But parents are concerned. That's because you've raised awareness, because I think most parents wouldn't think anything about it, honestly.
I never thought about it. Yes, I know. And until I never thought about it. I mean, my goodness, it's scary to think about. But you know what? Once you understand that there's things you can do, then let's do it. So I've actually, there's classes where a local private school near here, when after we did a presentation, they say, okay, no devices on the body. And so that's a fantastic first step. And we're really hopeful that as awareness grows about this issue and people learn more, that it's to plug into a cord your computer, it just makes sense. And why not?
Right. Why not? Well, I guess because we've just rolled out 5G for, coming, and because it's going the opposite direction, that's what sometimes feels very paralyzing to watch. The tide is so strong on this.
I know, but you know what? As a parent, I don't know, as a mother, it is so clear to me that always a safe environment for our kids makes sense. And if they're going to be using technology their whole lives, not like us who, I must have been 30s when I got my first cell phone, and these our children are going to be exposed for their whole life. So it really makes sense, especially for the children, to just take simple steps, really.
And what do you do with your girls and cell phones?
Well, this has become quite complicated, I'll be honest. And my 14-year-old does not have a cell phone, but we're not in a situation where she needs it. She does have a computer, which is hardwired at home, so she can chat with people and communicate, and has a phone, and she talks, and she's social. But I'm sort of navigating that as we go along. I'll tell you, as a parent without a cell phone, I have learned, this is sort of on a sidetrack, but I've learned that I need to trust a lot more, in that, I might drop my child off somewhere and she'll be somewhere and I'll say, I'll pick you up at this time. It's like the olden days instead of having her text me and tell me when. And I feel like I need to have taught her the things I need to teach her. And generally in an emergency, although I do think cell phones can be life-saving, I also think most of the time, she's going to work out whatever it is. Let's say she's late, I'll wait there, and she comes and meets me, or she's not in any settings. I mean, I guess for me, the way our life is right now, I haven't felt that she really needs a phone yet. I know that might seem like crazy to some people, but I just think she's 14 and she goes to school, she does music, sports. When does she need a phone?
It's probably when she starts driving that things may change, or, that kind of thing. Because I've noticed that as the years have gone on and my kids become driving age, it definitely seems to change at that point. But who knows? I'd love to stay in touch with you and hear what works out, because you are laying a foundation for them. At least they know, they know this. And that's why I want to end with you, Theodora, to the mom or dad listening who's wants to know this. Well, no one would be listening to this interview if they didn't want to know this information. So if they do understand that they want to do something about this influx of wireless radiation, would you agree the place to begin is where you began, which is in your own home?
Yes. First learn how to hardwire a home and reduce the radiation in your home, because, of course, when you're sleeping is when your body is healing and recovering and just getting its energy back, and your brain is doing all kinds of things at night, actually. So it's really great to have that time for your body at night. And then I think to begin to speak in your community and think about how you can help and educate your community and ensure that there are safe environments. I mean, because ultimately our kids and we're living in the community, so home and community and school. And I think it's growing. Really, awareness is growing all over the country, and parents are starting to really think about this. And I really recommend getting a meter so that you can understand, well, what is it? What is it, how much does come out of my phone, and how much, educate yourself in that way so you can really see it when you have a meter. I guess I should say that. It makes it more understandable.
I heard something good the other day that we can't see this, but you can feel it. If you go to the beach or up to the mountains and you're away from all devices, you notice how much calmer your nervous system is. I mean, that's a way to detect it, but we're often not making that connection. And before we go, I do want to ask you, have you found parents who have noticed that their children are electrohypersensitive?
Yes, and actually I just had a visit with a mother and children who one child had developed a sensitivity, and what they found was that in the classroom there was a real hot spot. What the mother found with her meter, because she'd gone to the school, a hot spot in the classroom. And I would say those numbers were pretty unprecedented. And so she's begun talking to the other parents about this issue. And I know that a lot of scientists are saying that the concern is with the amount of radiation that's going on in the school when you have a router overhead, in the same room often, or maybe right next door, and then everyone has a device. Let's say there's 30 kids, there'd be 30 devices transmitting. But then everyone also has a cell phone, and those cell phones aren't necessarily off in class. They're very often on and in pockets. So as you know, cell phones are always communicating with the tower or with the base station, even if you're not making a phone call, because they're just sort of checking in. That's pretty unprecedented amount of different frequencies, and it could mean, and what I've heard, and certainly if you look at what is happening in Israel, that where there was a Supreme Court case with literally hundreds of children who'd become sensitive, but that is really a lot on the system and a lot on young children, and could mean that we're going to be seeing much more sensitivity to electrical that people are noticing than previously, because there's so much exposure now compared to before.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Theodora, for all the work you're doing. And I would say to our listeners, if you'd like to know more about the work that Theodora is involved with, check out Environmental Health Trust, as well as Parents for Safe Technology, and get in touch with another local parents group to find out what they're doing, Safe Tech for Schools Maryland. Theodora, all the best to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to The Connecting Place, making the connection between health and your environment. Join us again next time for The Connecting Place with Andrea Fabry.